Tug of war over raising the U.S. debt ceiling continues in Congress. On Tuesday, the House defeated a bill to raise the limit, with Republicans calling for more spending cuts. Ron Paul, a Tea Party favorite and a Republican 2012 presidential candidate, joins me now. Congressman Paul, we've had some bad economic numbers this week and what some consider a political stunt, really, with House Republicans and some Democrats voting against raising the debt ceiling last night, while members privately assured Wall Street that the ceiling will be raised with budget concessions from the Democrats. Is it time to call off this game of chicken and get something done?
Yeah, I think so. I think it could qualify as a stunt, and I wasn't impressed. I don't know how you gain, but I'm not involved in the political strategy of our party. And maybe something good will come of it, and maybe they'll end up getting some cuts, but that wouldn't be my way of doing things.
So what should we be doing? Because we look at this economic data, and it has a lot of people very nervous today, especially ahead of the jobs report coming out on Friday. Treasury says today that it's on track to run out of wiggle room on the debt ceiling August 2nd. So what are the odds that we won't have an agreement by then?
I think there'll be an agreement. You know, they did the same thing when they came up with the continuing resolution, and I always assumed that it would get passed. I never bet any money on it, but I always assumed in the 11th hour, you know, right at the last minute, they did pass it and had a continuing resolution. They didn't close down the government. I think this will happen, and there'll be some pretense they're going to cut spending. But the big question is who's going to believe them? You know, you have to raise the debt limit soon if you want to avoid what some claim will be a very difficult time in the financial markets. But if you want to cut, when do you cut? The only thing you can cut is this year's budget, because every year's budget comes up, it's new. So this pretense that you have 5-year budget, it reminds me of the old days when we used to mock the communists when they had 5-year plans and 10-year plans. Now we have 10 and 15-year plans for reducing the deficit. It doesn't mean anything. So I think we're in for big trouble. I think the economy is very weak, and they may raise the debt limit, but believe me, our country is in continuous default, because we won't default by not paying people the money we owe them. We're going to default by depreciating the currency, and that's what we're doing.
Instead of talking on these 5-year plans, let's talk about today. Your hearing today will concentrate on the Federal Reserve and transparency. Bernanke is holding press conferences, and his focus as chairman has been to promote the idea of a more open Fed. What more do you want to see from the Fed to enhance transparency?
Well, I don't think we've seen very much yet, and it's like pulling teeth without anesthesia. We don't get very much. For instance, the staff's been working very hard for me. There's 29,000 pages of material. It's very difficult to understand. We picked out one section of 380 pages to go over in detail. And out of those 380, 80% of the material was redacted. So they don't even come clean. When you ask for the information, it's very, very difficult. So I'm not expecting a whole lot. I don't think they're going to reveal it, because they cling to secrecy, and they do not want transparency of what they're doing, especially what they do with foreign banks, because 30% of all these transactions were done overseas.
And your criticism of the Fed is well known, I would say, to say the least. Are you getting any traction, though, with your colleagues? Do you feel that there is momentum toward legislation that would curtail the Fed's activities in any way?
I think so, but I think because it's complex and nobody wants to do something that might rock the boat more than they would like. But where we're really getting traction is with the people. The people want more transparency. They know there's something wrong. They know the Fed is responsible for so many of our problems, and they want more transparency. And that has translated it into Congress wanting more. For instance, last year, my true audit of the Fed got a lot of attention. We passed it in the House. Every Republican supported it, and we had a lot of Democrats supported. So I think we're making a lot of progress, but it is very complex. And once again, what they'll do is scare everybody. You know, if you don't raise the debt limit, it'll be the end of times. And like when they had to do the TARP bailout, if we don't bail out everybody,
well, the market fell a lot that day, and the mood got changed. I want to ask you something we talked to Congressman Frank about, which is, should the way regional Fed presidents are selected be changed to require Senate confirmation? Is that something that you're thinking about at all, or should they not be able to vote on Fed policy making decisions? Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I don't think a lot about that, mainly because I'm not much interested in maintaining the Federal Reserve System. But since we will have the Federal Reserve for a while, yes, I think they should be confirmed because they have a lot of power and authority. The argument against it is they want to be independent-minded and represent the private banking community. But there is no such thing as a private independent banking community, because when you see how the Federal Reserve bails out private banks and how they participate in the fractional reserve banking system, it is not a private banking system. So I would say they should be approved by the Senate.
All right. Thanks, Representative Ron Paul, joining us from Capitol Hill. I'm Jen Rogers. This is Reuters Insider.